Hey, this is Mike Lindsay with Vital MX, and I'm here with Ryan Cox, and he is the R&D manager for the Honda HRC motocross team. I guess maybe I'll use your, you're basically anything related to the powertrain, right? The engine, the electronics, etc. for this motorcycle?
Yeah, basically anything to do with the internal engine parts, mapping, the injection, that kind of stuff is all kind of what I tinker with.
Your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So we were talking about your past. You originally come from basically ATV world, long time you have Suzuki, then Cowie, then Can-Am. But you know, people that are really familiar or dig into the stuff in moto would have first saw your name pop up. TLD back when they were in Honda. You did. You came in with them on the 3 generations ago platform, I guess it would have been.
Yes, I started at TLD at the end of 2012, and then we spent 2 seasons on a Honda. And then eventually moved to KTM.
I think that was a unique time because that's when TLD started to drift away from, you know, basically PC delivering them the package to you guys, taking it in-house and doing everything yourself. Of course, TLD really put themselves on the map there with Cole running for championships at the end of that Honda era. So I guess what I find really interesting, where it's kind of a fun place to start talking about, is we've got a new generation of bike here that has a different power character than the one you just left. But then when you were TLD, you had a power character as more so you gone from motor as low to mid to a mid to top, and now we're back to a low to mid. You know, I think your guys' first experience with this is Trey riding the production bike, coming in with his notes and stuff. So basically, when this thing gets handed to you, where did this start this year? What was your timelines?
I mean, initially we started with just seeing what transferred from the old bike to the new bike. Like, a lot of the parts are very similar. Like, we still run the same crankshaft, same connecting rod, same piston from the previous bike. So a lot of the work has been concentrated on the cylinder head and camshafts, which is, I mean, obviously, as you can see, going from 2 pipes to 1 pipe, and they've changed the camshaft and the rocker ratio, and it's been a bit of a project.
It's kind of funny, I would say, compared to the last one, because the old bike, this is very different, but at the same time, there is that carrier with the same combustion chamber, you're able to utilize the same piston, same crank. Some of the new character of the bike is coming from a big overhaul on the transmission side, your primary ratios, but I'd say where you probably had to spend most of your time is right under that valve cover, huh? There's been a big enough change there from what I'm aware. There isn't a lot of carryover from you. That's probably where you've been starting from scratch the most?
With what they've done with the valve train, we basically had to start over completely. And with this style camshaft, there's not a lot of manufacturers around that can make these things correctly. We got really lucky. We found a place in Japan that makes them for us. But that being said, kind of with everything going on, COVID and short time frame, like, you just don't get them, you don't order them and then get them in 2 weeks. You know, it's a long process to get them.
So your experience coming to what was Geico Honda, then is of course morphed in HRC, I believe you would have come in the winter of 19, am I correct?
Yes.
So when you got there, of course, it was big show, a lot of guys, but now it's thinned down, it's just you working with the Lawrences. Can you tell me what it was like coming into that group, you know, just kind of where you've gone the last 2 years to 3 years with this bike and working with the Lawrences, what it's been like?
I mean, starting at Geico, it was kind of a challenge. Totally new motorcycle to me. I'd been used to a KTM for so long, but just kind of digging in and figuring out what makes that thing run, you know. Everybody kind of had this stigma that the Honda was slow because it had 2 pipes, but I didn't really buy into it, you know. You can make them run. Obviously, I think we proved that last year with Jett, where throughout the season we kept progressing and progressing and progressing, and then, I mean, I think Jett said it the best. I would have never guessed I would have got a hole shot on this thing a year ago. Mm-hmm. And then we pulled a hole shot at Paula outdoors against the Yamahas that everybody thinks are so fast, you know. When starting at HRC, they've been actually really awesome with, they didn't want to change anything that we had been doing. They liked kind of the formula we had at FC, and they've kind of left me alone to just keep at it, you know, and it's been really nice.
That's pretty cool, because that's the best of both worlds. I'm sure from the outside, some people think, oh, being under the factory tent, you're going to have all the resources in the world. But with any major corporate entity, there's red tape, there's politics involved, there's other things. Sometimes being a private entity, you have all the control in the world, but it sounds like you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting kind of the old freedom you guys still had as a private entity from Geico, but you're getting also the backbone of all the resources and manpower of the HRC group.
Yeah, and I think being part of the Honda program, you get to use a lot of vendors that aren't really available to outside people. Like if I were to call the camshaft place we use now, when we were at Geico, they would have, who? You know?
These are kind of connections that come through HPD, even Honda's Formula One program, MotoGP program, these connections and stuff. Now those are all available to you, in a sense. You know, the new bike, this bike right here, basically, from a consumer standpoint, rider reviews, everybody's been stoked on. So much more low to mid performance, where like we talked about, the old bike was the opposite end of the spectrum. Getting to the pros, however, I know no matter what, the riders are always going to ask for what they don't have. I'm sure, like, okay, you went from bikes all mid-top, they were probably asking for bottom. Now this bike, they're probably like, well, now we want top again. Yeah. What's it been like working with the Lawrences? What were their initial comments on this bike? Because I'm sure, other than the intro photo shoot, you guys would have developed with Trey for a while before they ever wrote a built package, would be my guess.
We were super focused on winning the outdoor title. And so with that, I guess, task, we didn't really touch this thing until September. Yeah. And I wouldn't say it put us behind. We've had a lot of stuff to go through and work through. Obviously with Jett and Hunter, they're so talented on a motorcycle naturally that they can make anything work. We have been working on getting more mid to top, but that always comes at a price of less bottom and mid. It's funny how if you take just a little bit of bottom away to give them more top, they complain about no bottom. So it's always a balance of what they go fastest on.
I would think like the downside, if it's, you know, like comparing to some of the large 250 teams, what Geico was, what Star is, when you have 5-6 guys, you've got all them making their comments and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best balance? You're down to 2 guys. Like I said, they're both very talented. They are brothers. They ride, someone said they're both very natural down the bike. Do they ask for the same thing out of a 250? Is that at least a mill point, or do they actually end up prodding you for different things a little bit?
Not that Hunter's picky, but Hunter kind of drives it more. He has a lot more feedback, where Jett will kind of ride anything. He knows where the power's at and he'll put it in that spot. Where Hunter knows what he wants, and he's kind of my test mule, I guess you would say. If I really want to get into it, I go testing with Hunter and try to sort some stuff out.
Me and you were talking about prior to the interview is I think one of the best things about the new platform is a lot of that primary ratio change, transmission change, because, you know, a lot of people give a lot of credit to the Yamaha for being fast, but I've always said, like, the Yamaha part of why it's so rideable is the gaps, and the transmission is so evenly spaced. They overlap a little bit. You can, you know, over rev the bike, you can short shift it and stuff. The Honda had always been in a little bit different world where some gears were farther apart than others or closer than others. Would you say, is that been a good improvement even on your guys' end, where you usually have the ability to try different stuff like that? Has what they've given you production been a little more helpful?
Yeah, the gearbox is a huge help, especially for this package where it makes so much more bottom and mid. With the old model, one of our big hiccups was the gearbox itself. Just the spacing was not right for what we wanted. And I think they've kind of nailed it with this new one, where the gaps are good, the gears are nice and long. You're not constantly always in the wrong gear, which I felt like on the old bike we were.
Electronics, so the Honda, currently you have a battery box that's in an interesting location, you have an ECU in the back and stuff. How much work goes into it? You know, this is for a very different reason I don't think a lot of people understand, is you guys have to also not only think about the harness, everything in this being more weatherproofed, it's because your guys is disassemble the bike every week. It's not that the production harness is bad, it's just, it's meant for a consumer that's only gonna take it apart every 2 or 3 times, where you guys are doing it every weekend. You have to pull motors. How much thought and effort goes into that part of the layout?
I would say like the majority of the work that goes into this bike is not that we're not trying to make it handle good and all that stuff, it's making it easier to work on. Because a lot of the times when we have to work on it, it's in a hurry. If it's not easy to work on or fairly quick, it makes it really difficult.
Last one for you. So race team level, everybody thinks, okay, you're in here, you're getting your cams, you're pisting all your parts together and stuff. What are some of the things maybe that people don't think about as much as you probably deal with? I'm guessing probably the amount of time you spend on the dyno mapping a bike would probably scare people. Fuels, things like that, or there, I guess, even clutch components. People just go out and buy an aftermarket clutch. You guys probably spend a lot more time tinkering with those odds and ends than people would expect.
Yeah, I mean, to come up with the whole package, I don't think a lot of people have any idea how much you spend on each little piece and then have to make it all work together, you know. I know, like at Honda, they were really surprised when I started there how much dynoing we actually do on the 250, because with the 450, a lot of the stuff comes from the factory. The mapping, the cams, the pistons, all that stuff is kind of already preset. Where on the 250, it's basically what we can accomplish over here, and mapping on the dyno takes a ton of time. So, because you're running through every RPM, every throttle position, and doing fuel, ignition, 1 injector, 2 injectors. It's never ending.
Like I said, that's why I don't think a lot of people think. They just think, oh, dyno, you're wide open here. You're trying to, the guys like, okay, what they're feeling, it might be when you go back and look at data, what they're talking about feeling is at 10% throttle input. It's not at wide open, and that's a much different map or different set than you have to do when you're just doing wide open runs. And
yeah, I think a lot of people get lost that in order to get to wide open, you have to go through 15 other areas as well, you know, and if it doesn't run good in those 15 areas, it's going to take longer for it to get to wide open.
We'll leave you one last question, if you can answer or can't. Dual injectors. I think probably a lot of people think, oh, every race team 250 runs one. Is there, in all situations, are they actually a positive, or are there times, depending on the platform, that you find they're not necessary? Because as far as, I could be wrong, but I would believe when you guys were KTM, I don't think you guys ran them on your 250s there.
We didn't run one in Supercross last year. To me, for Supercross being so on off the throttle, I think injector placement is more important than that. We did switch to one for outdoors. We ran a second injector for outdoors, but outdoors with the length of time that they're wide open, it is a benefit. But in Supercross, with how quickly they're on and off the throttle, you very rarely, especially guys like Jett and Hunter, they're really throttle control riders.
They're not just stabbing down.
They're not just wide open. They'll probably never really see the benefits of a second injector in Supercross.